Hey, I'm John Tabler. Welcome back, and welcome to a lot of new subscribers. Today, what I want to do is actually give you kind of a tour, a kind of an exhibit of probiotics. And the reason why we should take probiotics is because it's a miracle substance. You know, it actually will take heavy metals out of your system, and this is all shown in studies. You can go on and do a search, put probiotics, heavy metals, and study, and you'll find a whole page of them that'll just pop up. Read them, and it's proof of what actually happens when you take living probiotics, which you really have to make. There's so many other things it will do. It will boost your immunity. They actually even did plenty of studies regarding COVID and the immunity factor that it provides, and it's pretty amazing. All you have to do is put lactic acid bacteria, and then you put spike protein, and then you put study, and you're going to see a whole page of them. So it's actually a miracle substance that has to be made, and of course it's been completely removed from society. You really can't buy it anywhere, get it anywhere. You have to make it. And so your great-great-grandparents did that because that's how they preserved their foods. But I want you to see some of the things that I'm actually making currently, and it's going to ring some bells in things you've heard in the past. And the first one I'm going to start with is actually wine. So, of course, we've all heard of wine, but they don't make wine anymore like it used to be made. Now they add yeast to it. Yeast comes from the mold and fungus family. It breaks things down in nature, not preserves things. It can't simultaneously be preserved and breaking down. It's one or the other. And yeast comes from the organisms that rot things and break them back down. It's really why you end up getting a hangover after you drink. But you know, wine was once used as medicine. And there's a conflict in people's minds. Why is that it could be used as medicine, but now it actually causes major problems in people's lives? Why is it in the Bible, but then it causes all these other problems? It's because of the leaven that's used. There's two leavens. There's one that is one that breaks down, and there's one that preserves. The one that preserves comes in nature naturally. So if you take a raw juice, say like apple juice, and you let it ferment on its own, just like your starter does with sourdough, you don't add anything to it, it preserves itself. It's how the grape crop and how the apple crop and everything was preserved before refrigerators and electricity. So you let it start fermenting, and that's exactly what's happening here. This is grape. It's grape juice that was squeezed. You put it in the jar, seal it from oxygen, and there's a one-way valve here that will let air out but not in, and it's going to preserve itself. And when it does, it has added to it, or what creates inside of it is something that modern science calls lactic acid bacteria, but it's so much more than that. It's actually a wide spectrum of energy that expresses itself in those particular names. But there's an endless amount of names because it's an endless amount of frequencies in between what would be the names. That's just a brief explanation of it. What I'm really saying is that to get the full power of the probiotic, you don't take little bits and pieces of it with names. You make it, and it gives you the whole preserved, the whole spectrum of the energy, so that you have that in your body. And when things like this show that they wipe out disease, they'll actually take a strong pesticide that's used to keep pests off of wheat, called chlorpyrifos, and actually just completely degrades it and makes it disappear. It's not even detectable. Like if you take a substance just like this, but say sauerkraut, which is the same thing, because you can take cabbage and start fermenting it, and once you do, they actually took some of that chemical and put it into a fermenting substance, and in 8 days it was completely gone. They couldn't even be detected any longer. So the promising and great thing is that it will do the same in our bodies. It's the miracle substance that can do these things. You have to put it in your diet, and there's so many great ways, and this is a few of them, and this is one of the strongest and best and one of the most difficult to get unless you make it yourself. But this is medicinal wine. You might see the bubbles popping up in here just like they do in your starter. So this is an apple, this is a grape. Now we also have milk, which has been phased out also. I'm actually going to show you the milk first right here. I'll show you a whole one. So it does the same thing. So this milk is put in there raw. It has to be in a form that hasn't been heated. None of these things can be heated. It takes the ability to ferment completely away unless a foreign substance is then added to it, but then that becomes a different thing altogether, and that's what happens when they do things with yeast. But what happens in this substance is it separates into a clear liquid and a solid mass. The clear liquid is called whey. The solid mass is called curds. This is how cheese was always made. Then what you do is you take what's called a cheesecloth, which is a piece of material, you can see, and you strain out the clear liquid called whey, which is intensely probiotic. And what you're left with is the solid mass, and then they would put it into these presses that would press it into wheels, the solid mass, but it's a probiotic living substance that's completely preserved. This milk has been sitting here for 24 hours. This has been in here on a counter well over a year, maybe 2 years. I lost track. And this one, the same thing. And so this is curds and whey. That'll be the best cheese you've ever had, but it has the properties in it to completely do all those things in your body, purify, keep your immunity at peak levels. All you have to do to find these studies, they don't put full spectrum probiotic in the keywords, but they'll put lactic acid bacteria, and then you put immunity, and then you put study. And you can pull all of them up, you can read them for all the proof, but I've done that. If I sit and show you all the studies, it's going to make for a more boring video. I've done that from time to time, and I will continue to do that, but I wanted to just let you know this. And really, if you can do it on your own, you can really know that you don't have to listen to someone else. You'll see the proof in front of you, and you'll understand why, yeah, baking, cooking, and all that thing is fun, but this is food science, the real deal. And this shows you the things that food, being your medicine, does in your body and can do for your health. And there was a guy that was rumored to have lived 152 years named Tom Parr, old Tom Parr. Do a search on that. And they interpret it wrong online because they say he existed on a diet of what they call sub-rancid cheese and milk, but in actuality what it is fermented milk, which is not rancid because that would be rotting. It is preserved and health-giving and life-giving, as is this. And one of the other things I'm going to show you is what you can take the grapes from that when you make that, and then ferment just what's left after the juice is squeezed. It'd be like sauerkraut, but with grapes. That's where the saying sour grapes came from. One of the easiest ways that you can add these things to your diet, it's tough to get raw milk. You have to actually go to a farm and get it because all the milk's been pasteurized, so you really can't do that and make that substance unless you have a source for that. Grapes, you can go to somewhere like Costco and you can crush them yourself. Now I have a press that pressed it out, and I'll do that in a video to come, but you don't have to have that, and you can find videos online. I'll do one coming up, but I wanted to show you this first. One of the easiest ways, though, to get these probiotics into your diet is flour, ground whole wheat, and I grind mine. And I'll just make my bread with it because I want all the vitamins in it. But make yourself a starter, okay? So what you're going to do is put about an inch of, or so, about this much of flour into a glass, thinking three things at the same time here, and then have purified water, spring water or purified water, because you can't have any chlorine in it. That's going to wipe all of it out and make it completely not work. So put a little bit of water in it. Don't measure, don't complicate things. Just put a little of this and a little of that. You cannot do this wrong. You really can't do this wrong. So do not worry. Just put some flour and put some water. You know, everyone wasn't like a complete scientific genius to be able to make food. What I'm doing is I'm making a paste, just a little thicker, stirring it with the water. There you go. Doesn't really matter. It can be thinner, thick, and it's done. That's your starter. You've never heard somebody say how to do a starter like that. Now I'm going to have a mess because I don't have anywhere to set that. So now, how is that your starter? Really? Because you let it sit now. You can put a piece of plastic over the top if you want. Don't have to. The warmer it is, the quicker it will ferment. The colder it is, the longer it's going to take. So I leave it out on the counter. Just like that. And in about a day, sometimes a little bit longer, it'll slightly start bubbling, about a day and a half. Then you add another of that much again, and you add the water and do it again and wait another day and a half. Then you do it a third time, and on the third time at the end, it's going to bubble up and you'll taste it and it's going to be a little sour like a lemon. Okay? At that point, it's ready to go. So then what you do is every time you use it, the ideal thing to do is you put some starter in there in the morning, some flour in there in the morning, and 8 hours later it's puffed up. And then you take it and you put that in your dough. I'm going to show you how to do that coming up. But I want to show you how easy that is to make a starter. Once it's sour, you've got your so-called, what they call lactic acid bacteria, but full spectrum probiotic is really the accurate name for it. It's pro-life. It's living, pro-living, and as opposed to antibiotic or breaking down, it's lifting up and preserving. And you take a spoonful of that and eat away just like you're eating sauerkraut, but you're not eating sauerkraut, which is sour cabbage. You're eating sour ground up wheat seeds, which is wheat powder, which is flour. Same exact thing though. So it doesn't matter. As long as it hasn't been heated, you can ferment it and you can transfer all those health benefits into your body. And that's the great thing about fermentation. This is just a few things. You can do milk, of course, that's more difficult. Wine is great, but to make probiotic living cheese, you have to do it that way. And the same thing with wine. So those have kind of effectively been removed from people. You can do it though. Obviously, I'm doing it. So, but you can so easily do it with flour. And so really, a spoonful of that a day, you're going to see a lot of things go on in your health that are the results of having that substance into your body. And you know, when you add that starter to a dough ball, when you make your dough, once the starter's done and you make a dough ball, is all you do is throw some flour into a bowl like this, and you add water to it and you make it into a dough ball, but not too tough, but, nice and just slightly gooey. Then you add about 3 tablespoons of that starter in there, and it works like a battery, a jump starter, and it makes, in the same way that the starter itself swelled up by adding a little flour to it, well, the dough ball does the same thing overnight and swells up. And in the same way that jump starts the dough ball, it's the same with your digestion when you eat it. So all the other foods you might eat or things in your body actually does the same thing, but internally inside you while you're doing that. And really, essentially, that's what cows do when they have numerous stomachs, because they eat grass and it takes a lot longer to ferment it. So that's why they chew their cud. It's kind of not appetizing to hear how it works, but it's actually a way of having their digestive process be much longer than a human's, so it can ferment the grass inside of them. And since we don't have the ability to do that, if we add a starter, which is what condiments always were, not so much anymore because now they make them with vinegar and things like that, and they're imitation. They kind of taste the same, but they don't have the same science. They don't have the same properties to be able to ferment that food and help your digestion while it's in you and act as a starter. In the same way a starter acts towards a dough ball, that condiment will then act like that when you eat. That's why people eat condiments all over. And that's why in Japan they'll have kimchi, and here they'd have relishes. Mustard and ketchup were fermented substances that acted as a starter on your digestion. And it's all been removed, and here it is coming back. So I'm trying to give it back and let people know why they really should do this. Yeah, baking is fun and kind of a novel thing and everything, and fun to make your own bread, because like right here, I've got bread, and you take a slice off that, put butter on it, and eat it, and it's great to have. But the thing that makes you do it and add it to your diet every day are these really medicinal properties of it that are shown in all the studies that has the ability to do. And when you add that to your diet, you're going to walk the best route of health that you can. It's the only really, as I was thinking through, it's really the only supernatural thing that is in food and substances that has the ability to make our bodies well. Because nowadays, medicine's basically been turned into chemicals, and that's not something we want, because there's always what they call side effects, but they're really death effects, because it's things that your body's reacting to that it doesn't want. So it's able to treat symptoms for a while, but not the root causes, and heal you. And this is able to do that. That's backed up again by studies. Take 10 minutes, sit down, put lactic acid bacteria immunity study. Put lactic acid bacteria heavy metals study. Put lactic acid bacteria, all the stuff that's been going on lately. You can put spike protein or COVID and study and search and see what proof has been given of the things that I'm saying, and then utilize it and incorporate it and add it into your diet. This is the real reason for this, and I wanted to impart that to you. So like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next video.